Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest ripples in our lives. What happens when a single father's simple gesture of helping a stranger on the side of the road completely changes the course of his future? This is the true story of Marcus Thompson, a man who thought he was just being a good neighbor, only to discover that the woman he helped would soon hold his fate in her hands. In a world where we often pass by those in need, one man's decision to stop and help would lead to an encounter that neither he nor Judge Rebecca Martinez would ever forget. This is a story about second chances, the power of human kindness, and how sometimes the universe has a way of bringing the right people together at exactly the right moment. The rain had been falling steadily for 3 hours when Marcus Thompson spotted the broken-down silver sedan on the shoulder of Highway 285. Steam rose from under the hood like smoke signals calling for help, and through his windshield wipers, he could see a woman in a business suit standing beside the vehicle, her phone pressed to her ear with obvious frustration. Marcus had been driving home from his second job at the warehouse, his body aching from another 12-hour shift. His 10-year-old son Jaden was waiting at his grandmother's house, probably already asleep, and Marcus had promised to pick him up before 9. It would have been easy to drive past, to tell himself that someone else would stop, that he had his own responsibilities to worry about. But something about the woman's posture, the way she stood so straight despite the rain soaking through her blazer, reminded him of his own mother. During the difficult times after his father left, he pulled his old pickup truck over, its brakes squeaking in protest. The truck had seen better days, with rust creeping along the wheel wells and a dent in the passenger door from when his neighbor's kid had hit it with a baseball, but it ran. And right now, that was all that mattered. Marcus grabbed his rain jacket from behind the seat and stepped out into the downpour. "Excuse me, ma'am," he called out as he approached. "Looks like you're having some car trouble." The woman turned toward him, and Marcus could see the wariness in her eyes. She was younger than he had initially thought, maybe in her late 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun that was now disheveled from the rain. Her clothes were expensive-looking, the kind of professional attire that suggested she worked in an office building downtown, not on this stretch of rural highway, 20 miles outside the city. "Yes, thank you," she replied, her voice carrying a slight accent that Marcus couldn't quite place. "My car started overheating about 10 minutes ago. I've called for a tow truck, but they said it could be 2 hours before they get here." Marcus nodded, understanding her predicament. This part of the highway was notorious for poor cell service and slow emergency response times. He had grown up in these rural areas, where neighbors helping neighbors wasn't just common courtesy, it was survival. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked, already walking toward the front of her car. "I'm not a mechanic, but I've kept that old truck running for 15 years. Might be something simple." The woman hesitated for a moment, and Marcus could practically see her internal debate. Here was a stranger, a black man in work clothes, offering to help her expensive car in the middle of nowhere. He had seen that look before, the quick calculation that people made when they first met him. Would they see a threat, or someone trying to help? "I'm Marcus, by the way," he said, keeping his voice gentle and non-threatening. "I live about 10 miles up the road. Been driving this stretch for 20 years. Rebecca," she replied, extending her hand despite the rain. Her grip was firm, and Marcus noticed calluses on her palm that surprised him. Whatever she did for work, it wasn't just sitting behind a desk. Marcus lifted the hood and immediately saw the problem. The radiator hose had split, sending coolant spraying across the engine compartment. It was a relatively simple fix, but not something that could be done on the side of the road without parts. "Your radiator hose is blown," he explained, wiping his hands on his jeans. "That's why she's overheating. The good news is it's not too expensive to fix. The bad news is you're not driving anywhere tonight." Rebecca's shoulders sagged slightly. "I was supposed to be at a dinner 2 hours ago. Important meeting that I really couldn't miss." "Where were you headed?" Marcus asked. "Maybe I can give you a lift somewhere." Again, that hesitation. Marcus understood it, even if it stung a little. In her position, he would probably be cautious too. A woman alone, accepting a ride from a stranger, it went against every safety rule she had probably been taught. "Listen," Marcus said, sensing her uncertainty. "I know you don't know me from Adam, but I've got a son about to start 5th grade, and if my mama was stuck out here in the rain, I'd hope somebody would stop to help her. I can take you wherever you need to go, or I can just stay here with you until the tow truck comes. Your choice." There was something in his voice, a sincerity that Rebecca found herself responding to. She had spent years learning to read people, to separate truth from deception, and everything about this man's demeanor suggested genuine concern rather than ulterior motives. "The Marriott downtown," she said finally. "But I don't want to put you out. You mentioned your son." "He's with his grandmother tonight," Marcus replied. "She won't mind if I'm a little late." As they walked toward his truck, Rebecca couldn't help but notice how Marcus shortened his stride to match hers, how he positioned himself between her and the traffic without making a show of it. When they reached the passenger door, he opened it for her and waited until she was settled before closing it gently. The inside of the truck was cleaner than Rebecca had expected. There were child safety certificates taped to the dashboard, a small cross hanging from the rearview mirror, and a McDonald's Happy Meal toy on the seat that Marcus quickly moved to the console with an apologetic smile. "Sorry about that," he said as he started the engine. "Jaden thinks my truck is his personal toy box." The truck's heater worked well, and Rebecca found herself relaxing as warmth filled the cab. Through the windshield, she watched her disabled car grow smaller in the side mirror, a symbol of how quickly circumstances could change. "So what do you do for work?" Marcus asked as they pulled onto the highway. It was the kind of small talk meant to fill the silence, but Rebecca found herself genuinely considering how to answer. "I work in the legal field," she said, which was true, if incomplete. "What about you?" "I work at Morrison's Manufacturing during the day, and I pick up shifts at a warehouse in the evenings," Marcus replied. "Not glamorous, but it pays the bills and gives me good benefits for Jaden." Rebecca found herself curious about this man who worked 2 jobs to provide for his son, who stopped to help strangers in the rain despite clearly having his own challenges. "How long have you been a single parent?" "About 6 years now," Marcus said, his hands tightening slightly on the steering wheel. His mum decided she wanted a different life, one that didn't include small-town responsibilities. "Can't say I blame her entirely, but Jaden deserved better than being abandoned." There was pain in his voice, but no bitterness. Rebecca had heard enough stories of broken families in her professional life to recognize the difference. This was a man who had been hurt but had chosen not to let that hurt poison his outlook. "That must be difficult," she said. "Raising a child alone while working 2 jobs." Marcus shrugged. "You do what you have to do." "Jaden's a good kid, smart as a whip, loves baseball and science fiction movies. He wants to be an astronaut or a marine biologist depending on what day you ask him." Rebecca smiled at the pride in Marcus's voice. "Sounds like he's lucky to have you as a father." "I'm the lucky one," Marcus replied. "That boy keeps me grounded, gives me purpose. Everything I do is for him." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythm of the windshield wipers and the steady drum of rain on the roof creating a cocoon of warmth in the truck's cab. Rebecca found herself watching Marcus as he drove, noting the careful way he navigated the wet roads, how he automatically slowed when they passed other vehicles. Consideration for everyone's safety. "Can I ask you something?" Rebecca said as they approached the city limits. "Shoot, why did you stop?" "Really, you had your own places to be, your own responsibilities." Marcus considered the question for a moment. "My grandmother always told me that we're all connected somehow, that the kindness we put into the world comes back to us in ways we can't predict. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "what if that was my mama out there?" Rebecca felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition of something genuine and rare. In her professional life, she encountered people every day who made calculated decisions, who weighed costs and benefits before acting. But this man had stopped simply because it was the right thing to do. As they pulled into the circular drive of the downtown Marriott, Rebecca realized she didn't want this conversation to end. There was something about Marcus Thompson that challenged her assumptions about people, about the world beyond her professional bubble. "Thank you," she said as the valet approached the truck. "I really can't tell you how much this means to me." "No problem at all," Marcus replied. "Hope your meeting goes well." Rebecca hesitated for a moment, her hand on the door handle. Would it be appropriate to pay for your gas?" "Or maybe buy you dinner sometime as a thank you." Marcus shook his head. "That's kind of you, but not necessary. Just pay it forward sometime when you see someone who needs help." As Rebecca stepped out of the truck and into the hotel's bright lights, she turned back for one more look at the man who had appeared like a guardian angel on a rainy highway. Marcus Thompson had no way of knowing that his simple act of kindness had just changed the trajectory of both their lives forever. The valet was already holding the hotel door open, and Rebecca walked through it, her mind still processing the encounter. She had been rescued by a stranger who expected nothing in return, who had simply seen someone in need and acted. It was a reminder of something she had lost sight of in her professional life, something about basic human decency that existed outside courtrooms and legal briefs. Marcus watched her disappear into the hotel before pulling away from the curb, He still had to pick up Jaden, and his grandmother would want to know why he was late, but as he drove through the quiet city streets, he found himself smiling. It had been a good night for helping someone, rain and all. Neither Rebecca nor Marcus had any way of knowing that their paths would cross again in just 3 weeks, under circumstances that would test everything they thought they knew about justice, mercy, and second chances. Tonight, they were simply two strangers who had shared a moment of human connection on a dark highway. But sometimes that's exactly how the most important relationships begin. 3 weeks after helping the stranded woman on Highway 285, Marcus Thompson's life took an unexpected turn that would test every principle he had tried to instill in his son. It started on a Tuesday morning when Jaden came running out of Roosevelt Elementary School, his backpack bouncing against his small frame, and tears streaming down his face. Marcus had been waiting in the pickup line, listening to sports radio and thinking about the overtime shift he had picked up for the weekend, when he saw his son's distressed expression through the windshield. Immediately, his father instincts kicked in, and he was out of the truck before Jaden reached him. "What's wrong, buddy?" Marcus asked, crouching down to his son's eye level. "Tommy Bradford and his friends were picking on Sarah again," Jaden said between sniffles. "They knocked her books down and called her stupid because she has that reading problem. I told them to stop, and Tommy pushed me, so I pushed him back." Marcus felt his heart sink. He had taught Jaden to stand up for others, but he also knew how these situations could escalate in today's school environment. "What happened after you pushed him back?"
"Tommy fell down and scraped his knee," Jaden continued, his voice getting smaller.
"Mrs. Peterson saw it happen and sent us both to the principal's office. She said she had to call the parents and that there might be consequences." As if summoned by the conversation, Principal Hayes emerged from the school building and walked toward Marcus's truck. Margaret Hayes was a stern woman in her 50s who had been running Roosevelt Elementary with an iron fist for over a decade. Marcus had always gotten along well with her, but the expression on her face today suggested this conversation wouldn't be pleasant. "Mr. Thompson," she said as she approached, "I'm afraid we need to talk about what happened today." Marcus listened carefully as Principal Hayes explained the incident from the school's perspective. According to the official report, Jaden had initiated physical contact with Tommy Bradford during what appeared to be a minor disagreement. While she acknowledged that Jaden claimed he was defending another student, the school's zero-tolerance policy regarding physical altercations meant there would be consequences. "I understand the policy," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice level. "But surely you can see the difference between a child defending someone who is being bullied and a child starting a fight." "The Bradfords see it differently," Principal Hayes replied, her tone suggesting the conversation was already decided. "They're claiming their son was assaulted and are threatening to involve the police if we don't take serious action." The word assault hit Marcus like a physical blow. He looked down at his 10-year-old son who barely weighed 70 pounds and tried to process how pushing another child in defense of a classmate could be characterized as assault. "What exactly are you saying?" Marcus asked. "Jaden is suspended for 3 days effective immediately," Principal Hayes said. "The Bradfords are also demanding that he be permanently transferred to another school in the district." Marcus felt his temper rising, but years of navigating workplace politics and single parenthood had taught him to control his reactions. "And what about Tommy Bradford's behavior toward the other student? Is bullying not also against school policy?" "The Bradfords claim their son was simply playing and that any conflict was initiated by Jaden," Principal Hayes replied. "Without additional witnesses who can corroborate Jaden's version of events, we have to treat this as a case of one student's word against another's." That evening, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with a stack of paperwork that seemed to grow larger by the hour. The suspension letter from the school was just the beginning. By afternoon, he had received a call from the police informing him that the Bradford family had indeed filed a complaint and that charges of simple assault were being considered against Jaden. Marcus rubbed his temples, trying to understand how his world had shifted so dramatically in a single day. He had raised Jaden to be kind, to protect others, to stand up for what was right. Now those very values were being used against them by people who seemed more interested in wielding influence than seeking justice. The Bradford family was well known in their small community. Tom Bradford Sr. owned 3 car dealerships and a construction company, and his wife Linda served on the school board. They lived in the affluent Maple Heights neighborhood and were regular donors to local political campaigns. Their son Tommy had been involved in several previous incidents at school, but somehow those situations had always been resolved quietly, without lasting consequences. Marcus, on the other hand, was a single father who worked 2 jobs and lived in a modest rental house on the south side of town. He didn't have connections or influence, just a strong work ethic and a determination to provide for his son. In the face of the Bradford family's resources and community standing, he felt like David facing Goliath, except this time he wasn't sure right would prevail. The next morning brought another unwelcome surprise. Marcus was loading pallets at the warehouse when his supervisor approached with an uncomfortable expression. "Marcus, I need to talk to you," Bill Henderson said. Bill had been a friend as much as a supervisor, and the tone in his voice immediately put Marcus on alert. "What's going on, Bill?" "Corporate got a call yesterday," Bill explained, avoiding eye contact. "Someone complained about having a potentially violent employee on the workforce. They're requiring you to take unpaid leave until this situation with your son gets resolved." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "Bill, you know me. You know I'm not violent. This is about a 10-year-old kid standing up to a bully." "I know that, and you know that," Bill replied. "But corporate has policies about employees involved in legal troubles, even if they involve family members." My hands are tied. The loss of income from his warehouse job was devastating. Marcus's budget was already stretched thin between rent, utilities, groceries, and Jaden's school supplies and activities. The extra money from his evening shifts had been what allowed them small luxuries like going to movies or eating pizza on Friday nights. Now, with potential legal fees looming and reduced income, Marcus found himself calculating how long their meager savings would last. That afternoon, while Jaden was at his grandmother's house, Marcus drove to the public library to research his legal options. The librarian, Mrs. Chen, had always been kind to Jaden and seemed genuinely concerned when Marcus explained what he was looking for. "Have you considered getting a lawyer?" she asked as she helped him find books on juvenile justice and school policies. "I've called 3 firms," Marcus replied. "The retainer fees alone would cost me 2 months' salary. Legal aid said they might be able to help, but it could take weeks to get an appointment." Mrs. Chen frowned sympathetically. "What about the incident itself? Surely there were other children who saw what really happened." "That's the problem," Marcus said. "The kids who witnessed it are scared to speak up. Tommy Bradford is popular, and his friends have made it clear that anyone who contradicts their story will become a target themselves." As Marcus researched late into the evening, he began to understand the complicated legal landscape he was facing. In their state, children as young as 10 could be charged with simple assault, though such cases were typically handled through the juvenile justice system. However, if convicted, Jaden could face counseling requirements, community service, and a juvenile record that might affect his future opportunities. The school situation was equally complex. While Jaden had the right to due process regarding his suspension, the Bradford family's influence meant that any appeals would likely be reviewed by people who had social and business relationships with the accusers. The demand for Jaden's transfer to another school was particularly troubling, as it would require him to leave his friends and teachers, essentially punishing him for defending someone else. Marcus spent hours reading about similar cases, looking for precedents or strategies that might help. What he found was disheartening. In case after case, children from working-class families faced harsher consequences than their wealthier peers for similar or even more serious infractions. The system seemed designed to favor those with resources and connections over those seeking simple justice. The weight of the situation began to affect both Marcus and Jaden in different ways. Jaden, who had always been an outgoing, confident child, became withdrawn and anxious. He asked repeatedly if he was going to jail, if he would be able to stay in his school, if his actions had ruined his father's life. Marcus tried to reassure him, but the uncertainty in his own voice was hard to hide. Marcus found himself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling and wondering if he had failed as a father. Had he taught Jaden the wrong lessons about standing up for others? Should he have prepared his son better for a world where doing the right thing could lead to punishment? The questions tormented him, especially when he thought about his own father, who had left when things got difficult, and his determination to be a different kind of man. By the end of the week, Marcus had exhausted most of his options. The legal aid office had scheduled an appointment for the following month, too late to help with the immediate crisis. His savings account was nearly empty from taking unpaid leave, and the bills were starting to pile up. The Bradford family's lawyer had sent a formal letter demanding a written apology from Jaden, an agreement to transfer schools, or they would proceed with pressing charges. It was during this dark period that Marcus received an unexpected phone call that would change everything. The voice on the other end was professional but warm and somehow familiar. "Mr. Thompson? This is Rebecca Martinez. We met a few weeks ago when you helped me with my car trouble on Highway 285. Marcus was surprised to hear from her, but pleased. "Of course, Rebecca. How are you? Did you get your car fixed okay?" "I did, thank you. Listen, I hope this doesn't seem strange, But I heard through some mutual acquaintances about the situation with your son. I was wondering if you might have time to meet for coffee this week. Marcus hesitated, unsure what to make of the call. He had told very few people about Jaden's troubles, trying to protect his son's privacy and his own dignity. I appreciate the concern, but I'm not sure there's much to discuss. It's just a difficult situation we're working through. Actually, Rebecca said, I think there might be more I can do to help than you realize. Would Thursday afternoon work for you? There's a coffee shop called Grounds for Hope on 5th Street. Do you know it? Something in Rebecca's tone suggested this wasn't a casual social call. Marcus agreed to meet her, though he couldn't imagine what someone from her professional background could do to help a working-class father navigate the juvenile justice system. As he hung up the phone, Marcus felt a flicker of something he hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. He didn't know why Rebecca Martinez wanted to help or what she might be able to do, but her call reminded him of something his grandmother used to say about how help sometimes comes from unexpected places. That night, as Marcus tucked Jaden into bed, his son asked a question that had been haunting both of them. Dad, are we going to be okay? Marcus looked into his son's worried eyes and made a decision to trust in the goodness of people, even when circumstances seemed dark. Yes, buddy, we're going to be just fine. Sometimes when things look really bad, that's when good people step up to help. And I have a feeling some good people are about to step up for us. Neither father nor son could have imagined that the good person Marcus was thinking of was actually Judge Rebecca Martinez, or that their coffee meeting would reveal a connection that would turn their legal nightmare into an opportunity for justice to truly be served. Thursday afternoon arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that usually lifted Marcus's spirits, but today he felt nothing but nervous anticipation as he walked into Grounds for Hope coffee shop. The small establishment was busier than he had expected, filled with college students studying for midterms and business people conducting informal meetings over lattes and pastries. Marcus spotted Rebecca immediately. She sat at a corner table, dressed more casually than he remembered from their rainy highway encounter, wearing dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that made her look approachable rather than intimidating. She was reading what appeared to be legal documents, occasionally making notes in the margins with a silver pen. As Marcus approached the table, Rebecca looked up and smiled, the same genuine warmth he remembered from their first meeting. Marcus, thank you so much for coming. Can I get you some coffee? Just black coffee would be great, Marcus replied, settling into the chair across from her. I have to admit, I'm curious about why you wanted to meet. It's been a rough few weeks and I'm not sure I'm the best company right now. Rebecca signaled the barista and ordered 2 black coffees before turning her full attention to Marcus. There was something different about her demeanor today, more focused and professional, but still carrying that underlying kindness that had struck him during their first encounter.
Marcus, I need to tell you something, and I hope you'll hear me out completely before you react,
Rebecca began. When we met that night, I wasn't entirely honest about what I do for work. I told you I work in the legal field, which is true, but incomplete. Marcus felt a flutter of concern. Had he misjudged this woman? Was she somehow connected to the Bradford family or their legal team? I'm a judge, Rebecca continued. Specifically, I'm Judge Rebecca Martinez of the County Juvenile Court System. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He leaned back in his chair, his mind racing to process this information. The woman he had helped on the highway, the woman who had seemed so genuine and kind, was part of the very system that was threatening to destroy his son's future. I can see you're shocked, Rebecca said gently, and probably wondering if this is some kind of setup or conflict of interest. Let me explain why I called you. Marcus found his voice, though it came out rougher than he intended. Are you telling me that you're going to be the judge on Jaden's case? No, Rebecca said firmly. When I learned about your situation and realized the connection, I immediately recused myself from any involvement in your son's case. Judge Patterson will be handling it instead. But Marcus, I called you because what I've learned about your situation troubles me deeply, both as a judge and as someone who experienced your character firsthand. The barista brought their coffees, and Rebecca waited until they were alone again before continuing. I've spent the last week reviewing similar cases and talking to people at your son's school. What's happening to Jaden isn't justice. It's a misuse of the system by people with influence and resources. Marcus wrapped his hands around the warm coffee mug, trying to ground himself in the moment. So you know about the Bradfords? I know enough, Rebecca replied. I know that Tommy Bradford has been involved in 3 previous bullying incidents at Roosevelt Elementary, all of which were quietly resolved without consequences. I know that his father made a significant donation to the school's new gymnasium project last year. And I know that there were 4 children who witnessed the incident between Jaden and Tommy, but only one has been willing to give an official statement. How do you know all this? Marcus asked. Rebecca's expression grew serious. Because I've been doing some unofficial investigating. After I learned about your situation, I couldn't stop thinking about the man who stopped to help me in the rain, who talked about his son with such love and pride. I kept wondering how that same man's child could be facing assault charges for defending a classmate. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. I want to show you something, but first I need you to understand that everything I'm about to share with you, I learned through my own personal research, not through any official channels. This isn't about me using my position inappropriately. It's about me using my experience and connections to find the truth. Marcus nodded, still processing the revelation that he was sitting across from a judge. Rebecca opened the folder and pulled out several handwritten statements. These are testimonies from 3 children who witnessed the incident between Jaden and Tommy Bradford. I spoke to them myself, along with their parents, after school hours and away from any official capacity. She handed Marcus the first statement, written in a child's careful handwriting. This is from Sarah Mitchell, the girl Jaden was defending. Marcus read the statement carefully. According to Sarah, Tommy Bradford and 2 of his friends had cornered her during recess, calling her Stupid Sarah because of her dyslexia. They had knocked her books out of her hands and were threatening to put dirt in her backpack when Jaden approached and told them to stop. Tommy had pushed Jaden first, calling him names that made Sarah's parents visibly angry when she repeated them to Rebecca. Only then had Jaden pushed Tommy back, causing him to trip and fall. The second statement was from Maria Santos, a 5th grader who had been playing nearby. Her account corroborated Sarah's story and added that Tommy had been bragging to his friends about how his parents could get rid of anyone who caused trouble for their family. The third statement was the most damning. Kevin Wu, a quiet boy in Jaden's class, had written a detailed account of not just the incident in question, but several previous occasions when Tommy Bradford had bullied other students while his friends watched. Kevin's parents had been reluctant to let him get involved, but after meeting with Rebecca and understanding the larger implications, they had agreed to let their son tell the truth. Why didn't any of these children speak up during the official investigation? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Because they were scared, Rebecca replied. Tommy Bradford's father had made it clear through various channels that any family who supported accusations against his son would find themselves facing their own problems. Kevin's father works for a construction company that has contracts with Bradford Construction. Maria's mother cleans houses in the neighborhood where the Bradfords live. Sarah's parents run a small restaurant that depends on local customers. Marcus felt a familiar anger rising in his chest, but it was tempered now by something else. Hope. What does this mean for Jaden? It means we have the evidence needed to show that your son was defending another child against bullying, and that the Bradford family has been using intimidation to silence witnesses. Rebecca explained. But Marcus, I need you to understand something important. I can't represent you or Jaden in any official capacity. I can't appear in court on his behalf or use my judicial position to influence the outcome. Then why are you showing me this? Marcus asked. Rebecca leaned forward, her voice taking on an intensity that reminded Marcus of the determined woman he had met on the highway. Because I can help you find the right lawyer, one who specializes in these kinds of cases, and who won't be intimidated by the Bradford family's resources. And because these statements, gathered as they were through private conversations, can be used by that lawyer to build a proper defense for Jaden. She pulled another document from the folder. I've also been in touch with Amanda Rodriguez, a civil rights attorney who has successfully handled several cases involving abuse of the juvenile justice system. She's agreed to take Jaden's case pro bono, meaning you won't have to pay legal fees. Marcus stared at the business card Rebecca handed him, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing.
Why would she do that?
Because she believes in justice, Rebecca replied. And because when I told her about a single father who stopped to help a stranded stranger, then found himself facing the justice system's double standards, she wanted to help. For the first time in weeks, Marcus felt like he could breathe properly. I don't know what to say. I never expected, Marcus, Rebecca interrupted gently. There's something else you need to know. When Judge Patterson reviews this case, he's going to have access to all the information I've gathered, because Amanda Rodriguez will present it as evidence. He's a fair judge who doesn't tolerate abuse of the system, regardless of who's involved. She paused, seeming to consider her words carefully. There's also going to be an investigation into how the school handled this situation. The school board is going to learn about the witness intimidation and the pattern of favoritism toward the Bradford family. Principal Hayes may find herself answering some difficult questions about why she didn't interview all the witnesses herself. Marcus shook his head in amazement. You've done all this in just 1 week? I've done this because that night on the highway you showed me something I had started to lose sight of in my professional life. Rebecca replied. You reminded me that sometimes people do the right thing simply because it's right, without calculating the cost or benefit. When I learned that you and your son were being punished for that same quality, I couldn't stand by and do nothing. As they talked, Marcus began to understand the full scope of what Rebecca had accomplished. She had not only gathered evidence to defend Jaden, but had also uncovered a pattern of behavior that suggested the Bradford family had been abusing their influence for years. Her investigation had revealed other families who had been intimidated into silence, other children who had been bullied without consequences, other situations where wealth and connections had trumped justice. There's one more thing, Rebecca said as their conversation began to wind down. Amanda Rodriguez wants to meet with you and Jaden tomorrow afternoon. She'll need to prepare Jaden to testify about what happened, but she's very good with children. She'll make sure he feels safe and supported throughout the process. Marcus felt tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. Rebecca, I don't know how to thank you for this. You didn't have to get involved. You could have just gone on with your life after that night. That night changed something for me too, Rebecca replied. I've been a judge for 8 years, and somewhere along the way, I think I had started to see cases as puzzles to be solved rather than lives to be protected.
Meeting you reminded me why I went into law in the first place.
As they prepared to leave the coffee shop, Rebecca handed Marcus a final piece of paper. This is my personal phone number.
If you need anything during this process, if you have questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to call me. I may not be able to represent you officially, but I can offer advice and support as a friend. Walking back to his truck, Marcus felt like the world had shifted again, but this time in a positive direction. The woman he had helped on a rainy night had turned out to be exactly the right person to help him when he needed it most. It was, as his grandmother would have said, proof that kindness creates its own kind of destiny. That evening, when Marcus told Jaden about the meeting with Rebecca and the lawyer who would help them, his son's response surprised him. Dad, is Judge Rebecca the same lady whose car broke down?
Yes, buddy. How did you know she was a judge?
Jaden thought for a moment before answering. Because you always told me that when we help people, good things come back to us. I guess sometimes the people we help turn out to be the ones who can help us back. Marcus hugged his son tightly, marveling at the wisdom of children and the mysterious ways that life sometimes works out. Tomorrow they would meet with Amanda Rodriguez and begin the process of clearing Jaden's name. But tonight, Marcus simply felt grateful for the reminder that there are still good people in the world, and sometimes they appear exactly when you need them most. Amanda Rodriguez's office was nothing like the sterile, intimidating law firms Marcus had visited in his desperate search for representation. Located in a converted Victorian house near downtown, the space felt warm and welcoming, with family photos scattered across the desk and children's drawings taped to one wall. When Marcus and Jaden arrived for their Friday afternoon appointment, they were greeted by a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a reassuring smile. You must be Jaden, Amanda said, crouching down to the 10-year-old's eye level. I'm Amanda, and I'm going to be your lawyer. Do you know what that means? Jaden nodded solemnly.
You're going to help make sure I don't get in trouble for helping Sarah.
That's exactly right, Amanda replied. And I want you to know that everything you tell me today is private, just between us and your dad. No one else will hear it unless you say it's okay. As they settled into Amanda's office, Marcus found himself studying the lawyer who had agreed to take their case. Rebecca had described Amanda as a civil rights attorney who specialized in cases involving children and families, but Marcus was struck by how normal she seemed, how approachable and genuine. Before we talk about what happened at school, Amanda began, I want both of you to understand what we're dealing with. The Bradford family has hired Harrison, Klein & Associates, which is one of the most expensive law firms in the state. They're known for aggressive tactics and for protecting wealthy clients at any cost. She opened a thick file on her desk. They're claiming that Jaden initiated an unprovoked assault on their son, and they're pushing for the maximum penalties available under juvenile law. They want him placed in a diversion program, which would include anger management classes and community service, plus a permanent transfer to another school. Marcus felt his stomach clench. What does that mean for Jaden's future? If they succeed, he would have a juvenile record that could affect college applications, job opportunities, even military service, Amanda explained. It would follow him for years, possibly his entire life. But that's not going to happen. She continued, her voice taking on a determined edge. Because we have something they don't expect, the truth, and witnesses willing to tell it. Amanda spent the next hour carefully interviewing Jaden about the incident. Her approach was patient and methodical, never making the boy feel like he was being interrogated. Instead, she asked him to tell the story like he was describing a movie he had seen, encouraging him to include every detail he could remember. Jaden's account was consistent with the witness statements Rebecca had gathered. He described how Sarah had been surrounded by Tommy and his friends, how they had called her names and knocked her books down, how Tommy had pushed him first when he tried to intervene. When Amanda asked why he had pushed Tommy back, Jaden's answer was simple and heartbreaking. Because he was being mean to Sarah and nobody else was helping her. My dad always says we should protect people who can't protect themselves. Amanda glanced at Marcus, who felt a surge of pride mixed with worry. Had he taught his son the wrong lessons? In a world where doing the right thing could lead to legal consequences, should he have prepared Jaden differently? Jaden, you did exactly the right thing, Amanda said firmly. Protecting someone from bullying is never wrong. What's wrong is when bullies think they can get away with hurting people because their parents have money. Over the following week, Amanda worked tirelessly to build Jaden's defense. She interviewed each of the witnesses Rebecca had found, this time in an official capacity that would allow their statements to be used in court. She also discovered additional evidence that painted a disturbing picture of the Bradford family's influence over the school and local community. The most shocking revelation came when Amanda interviewed former Roosevelt elementary students and their families. She discovered that Tommy Bradford's bullying behavior went back years, and that several families had tried to file formal complaints, only to have them dismissed or ignored. In one case, a family had been forced to move their child to a different school after Tom Bradford Sr. threatened the father's job. This isn't just about your son, Amanda explained to Marcus during one of their strategy meetings. This is about a family that has been using their wealth and influence to protect their child from consequences while allowing him to terrorize other kids. Jaden's case is going to expose all of that. Amanda also uncovered evidence of financial improprieties involving the Bradford family and Roosevelt Elementary. Tom Bradford Sr.'s construction company had been awarded several school contracts without competitive bidding, and his wife Linda's position on the school board had been used to push through policies that seemed designed to protect her son from disciplinary action. The school district is going to face some serious questions about this, Amanda told Marcus, and Principal Hayes is already updating her resume. As the court date approached, the Bradford family's legal team began employing the aggressive tactics Amanda had warned about. They filed motions to suppress the witness testimony, claiming it had been gathered improperly. They attempted to have Amanda removed from the case, arguing that her civil rights background made her biased against their client. They even hired a private investigator to look into Marcus's background, hoping to find something they could use to discredit him as a father. They're getting desperate, Amanda explained after each new legal maneuver. When people with unlimited resources start losing a case, they tend to lash out. We just need to stay focused on the facts. The pressure was taking its toll on Marcus and Jaden. The boy had developed trouble sleeping, often waking up with nightmares about going to jail or being separated from his father. Marcus found himself constantly worried about money, as his reduced income from the warehouse job loss was making it difficult to pay bills. Even though Amanda was working for free, there were still court costs and other expenses that strained their budget. It was during this difficult period that Rebecca Martinez made another unexpected appearance in their lives. She called Marcus on a Wednesday evening just as he was helping Jaden with his homework. I hope I'm not bothering you, Rebecca said, but I wanted to check in and see how you're holding up. We're managing, Marcus replied, though his voice betrayed the stress he was feeling. Amanda says the court date should be set soon. Actually, that's part of why I'm calling, Rebecca said. I wanted to give you a heads up about something. The Bradford family's lawyer has been asking questions about our connection, trying to find some way to use it against you. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine.
What kind of questions?
They're trying to suggest that I've been improperly involved in your case. That maybe I helped you in exchange for some kind of favor or payment, Rebecca explained.
It's completely baseless.
That they're hoping to create doubt about the legitimacy of the evidence I helped gather.
Will that affect Jaden's case?
Marcus asked.
Not if we handle it correctly, Rebecca replied. Amanda and I have discussed it, and we think the best approach is complete transparency. If they want to make our connection an issue, we'll make it work in our favor. The court hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in mid-November. Judge Patterson's courtroom was smaller than Marcus had expected, with wood-paneled walls and fluorescent lighting that gave everything a slightly greenish tint. The Bradford family arrived with an entourage that included their lawyer, a jury consultant, and several character witnesses. They had also brought Tommy, who sat between his parents, looking uncomfortable in an expensive suit. Marcus and Jaden sat with Amanda at the defendant's table, and Marcus noticed how small his son looked in the formal setting. Jaden wore his best clothes, a button-down shirt and khakis that his grandmother had bought for special occasions, but he still looked like what he was, a scared 10-year-old boy facing the full weight of the legal system. Judge Patterson was a distinguished man in his 60s with grey hair and piercing blue eyes. Amanda had described him as fair but strict, someone who didn't tolerate nonsense from either side. As he reviewed the case files, his expression gave no hint of his thoughts. The Bradford family's lawyer, James Klein, presented their case first. He painted a picture of an unprovoked attack by a child with anger management issues, suggesting that Jaden's single-parent household had failed to provide proper guidance and discipline. He called Tommy Bradford to testify, and the boy repeated the story his parents had coached him to tell, that he had been playing with friends when Jaden approached and pushed him without warning. "This young man has a pattern of aggressive behavior," Klein argued. "The defendant's father works multiple jobs and clearly doesn't have time to properly supervise his son. This incident is the inevitable result of inadequate parenting and lack of structure in the home." Marcus felt his face burning with anger at the personal attacks, but Amanda had prepared him for this.
"They're going to try to make this about you," she had warned. "Don't let them see that it bothers you."
When it was Amanda's turn to present Jaden's defense, she began with something Klein hadn't expected. She called Rebecca Martinez to testify.
"Your Honor," Amanda said, "I'd like to call Judge Rebecca Martinez as a character witness for the defendant's father." Klein immediately objected. "Your Honor, this witness has an inappropriate relationship with the defendant's family." Judge Patterson looked intrigued. "Explain the nature of this relationship, Counselor Rodriguez." Amanda smiled. "Your Honor, Judge Martinez will testify about an encounter she had with Mr. Thompson several weeks before this incident occurred, an encounter that demonstrates his character and the values he instills in his son." Rebecca took the stand and told the story of the rainy night when Marcus had stopped to help her. She described his kindness, his concern for her safety, and the way he had spoken about Jaden with love and pride. She explained how his actions that night had shown her the kind of man he was, and by extension, the kind of father he must be. Mr. Thompson expected nothing in return for his help, Rebecca testified. He simply saw someone in need and acted to help them. "When I learned that his son was facing charges for defending a classmate from bullying, I was compelled to look more closely at the case, because I couldn't reconcile the man I met with the picture being painted by the prosecution." Klein tried to discredit Rebecca's testimony by suggesting she had been improperly involved in the case, but Judge Patterson shut him down quickly. "The witness has explained that she recused herself from any official involvement and that her assistance was provided as a private citizen. Her testimony stands." Amanda then called the three child witnesses Rebecca had found. One by one, Sarah Mitchell, Maria Santos, and Kevin Wu told their stories. Their testimonies were powerful and consistent, painting a clear picture of Tommy Bradford as a bully who had been protected by his family's influence. The most compelling moment came when Sarah Mitchell, the girl Jaden had defended, took the stand. Despite her reading difficulties, she spoke clearly and bravely about what had happened. "Tommy and his friends were being really mean to me," she said in a small but steady voice. "They called me stupid and knocked my books down. I was scared and didn't know what to do. Then Jaden came over and told them to stop. Tommy pushed Jaden first, and that's when Jaden pushed him back." When Klein tried to cross-examine Sarah, suggesting that she might be confused about what she had seen, she looked directly at him and said, "I know what happened to me. Jaden helped me when nobody else would." The final witness was Jaden himself. Amanda had prepared him carefully for this moment, helping him understand that he needed to tell the truth simply and clearly. When she asked why he had gotten involved in the situation with Sarah and Tommy, Jaden's answers silenced the courtroom. "My dad always tells me that we're supposed to help people who need help, even if it's hard or scary. Sarah needed help, and Tommy was being mean to her. I tried to stop him with words first, but he wouldn't listen. I didn't want to push him, but I couldn't just let him keep hurting Sarah." Judge Patterson listened carefully to all the testimony, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly maintaining an impassive expression. When both sides had finished presenting their cases, he announced that he would recess for an hour to consider his ruling. During that hour, Marcus and Jaden sat in the courthouse hallway, watching the Bradford family huddle with their legal team. Marcus noticed that Tom Bradford Sr. kept glancing in their direction with an expression that seemed to mix anger with something else, something that might have been respect. When court reconvened, Judge Patterson's expression had changed. He looked directly at the Bradford family as he began to speak. In my 25 years on the bench, I have seen many cases that test the boundaries between justice and influence, between what is legal and what is right. This case represents something troubling about our community and our institutions. He turned to Tommy Bradford. Young man, the evidence presented today makes it clear that you have been engaging in bullying behavior for an extended period, and that your parents have used their position in this community to protect you from consequences. That ends today. Judge Patterson then addressed the court as a whole. The evidence overwhelmingly supports the defendant's version of events. Jaden Thompson was defending a classmate from bullying when he was forced to use minimal physical force to protect her. His actions were justified and admirable. The relief that washed over Marcus was almost overwhelming. Judge Patterson continued with his ruling, dismissing all charges against Jaden and ordering a formal investigation into the school's handling of bullying incidents. He also mandated that Tommy Bradford undergo counseling and that the family make a public apology to both Jaden and Sarah. As they left the courthouse, Marcus felt like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Justice had been served, but more than that, his faith in the system had been partially restored. The Bradford family walked past them without making eye contact, their expensive legal team carrying boxes of files that had ultimately been useless against the simple truth. Outside the courthouse, Amanda hugged both Marcus and Jaden. "You should be proud," she told them. "You stood up for what was right, even when it was difficult and scary." Rebecca Martinez was waiting for them on the courthouse steps. When she saw them emerge with smiles on their faces, she knew immediately what the outcome had been. "Congratulations," she said, embracing Marcus warmly. Justice was served today. As they stood on the courthouse steps, Marcus realized that this experience had changed all of them. Jaden had learned that doing the right thing sometimes comes with a cost, but that it's worth paying. Amanda had been reminded why she had gone into civil rights law in the first place. Rebecca had rediscovered her commitment to justice over convenience. And Marcus had learned that sometimes the people you help along the way become the ones who help you when you need it most. 6 months after the courthouse victory, Marcus Thompson stood in the parking lot of Roosevelt Elementary School, watching Jaden run across the playground with his friends. The spring afternoon was warm and bright, a stark contrast to the dark autumn days when their world had seemed to be falling apart. The changes in their lives since then had been profound, affecting not just their family, but the entire community. The first major change had come within days of Judge Patterson's ruling. Principal Hayes had been quietly reassigned to an administrative position at the district office, and Roosevelt Elementary had welcomed a new principal, Dr. Angela Foster, whose first priority was implementing a comprehensive anti-bullying program. The school board had also undergone significant changes, with Linda Bradford resigning her position amid the investigation into her family's influence over school policies. Tommy Bradford himself had been transferred to a private school across town, where his parents hoped a smaller, more structured environment would help him learn better social skills. The mandatory counseling Judge Patterson had ordered was reportedly going well, and there had been whispers in the community that the experience had humbled the Bradford family considerably. For Marcus and Jaden, life had settled into a new rhythm that felt both familiar and different. Marcus had been welcomed back to his warehouse job, with an apology from corporate and a small promotion that came with better hours and benefits. The additional income meant they could move from their rental house to a modest but comfortable home in a neighborhood with better schools, closer to Marcus's mother. Jaden had thrived since returning to school. The trauma of the legal proceedings had given way to a quiet confidence that came from knowing he had done the right thing, even when it cost him dearly. His grades had improved, and he had been elected to the student council, where he championed initiatives to help students who were being bullied. But perhaps the most significant change in their lives was the friendship that had developed with Rebecca Martinez. What had begun as a chance encounter on a rainy highway had evolved into a genuine connection that enriched all their lives. Rebecca had started joining Marcus and Jaden for dinner once a week, usually on Sundays when her court schedule was lighter. These meals had become a highlight of their week, filled with laughter, deep conversations about life and justice, and Jaden's endless questions about how the legal system worked. Judge Rebecca, Jaden had asked the previous Sunday while they worked together in Marcus's small garden, "Do you ever get scared when you have to make big decisions in court?" Rebecca had paused in her weeding, considering the question seriously. "Sometimes I do, Jaden. When you're deciding something that could change someone's life, it's important to feel the weight of that responsibility. But I've learned that the fear goes away when you focus on doing what's right rather than what's easy. These conversations had been healing for Rebecca as well. Her friendship with Marcus and Jaden had reminded her why she had become a judge in the first place and had helped her reconnect with the human element of her work. She had begun volunteering with legal aid organizations and had started mentoring young lawyers who wanted to work in civil rights. The community impact of Jaden's case had been broader than anyone had anticipated. Amanda Rodriguez had used the attention generated by the case to launch a non-profit organization focused on protecting children from bullying and abuse of the juvenile justice system. Several other families had come forward with their own stories of being intimidated by wealthy or influential people, and Amanda was working to help them seek justice. The local newspaper had run a series of articles about inequality in the school system and the juvenile justice system, sparked by an investigative reporter who had covered Jaden's case. The series had led to policy changes at both the district and state level, including new requirements for transparency in school disciplinary actions and stricter oversight of juvenile court proceedings. On this particular spring afternoon, Marcus was waiting for Rebecca to arrive for a special celebration. It was the 6-month anniversary of Judge Patterson's ruling, and they had planned a small party to mark the occasion and to celebrate some recent good news. Marcus spotted Rebecca's car pulling into the school parking lot and walked over to greet her. She emerged wearing casual clothes and a bright smile, carrying a wrapped gift that was clearly meant for Jaden. "How did the ceremony go?" Rebecca asked as they walked toward the playground. "Better than I expected," Marcus replied. Jaden was nervous about giving a speech in front of the whole school, but he handled it like a pro. You would have been proud of him. Earlier that day, Dr. Bear Foster had held a special assembly to recognize students who had shown exceptional courage and kindness during the school year. Jaden had been chosen to receive the first annual Courage in Action Award for his willingness to stand up to bullying, even at personal cost. In his acceptance speech, Jaden had spoken about the importance of helping others and the value of doing what's right even when it's difficult. He had also thanked the people who had supported him during his difficult time, specifically mentioning his father, Amanda Rodriguez, and Judge Rebecca, who showed us that good people help each other. "There's Jaden now," Rebecca said, pointing to where the boy was playing soccer with a group of friends that included Sarah Mitchell and Kevin Wu. The three had become close friends since the trial, bonded by their shared experience and their commitment to looking out for other students who might be facing bullying. As they approached the playground, Jaden spotted them and came running over, his face flushed with excitement and exertion. "Judge Rebecca!" he called out, using the title that had stuck despite her many attempts to get him to just call her Rebecca. "Did Dad tell you about the speech?" "He did, and I'm very proud of you," Rebecca replied, giving him a hug. "I brought you a little something to celebrate." Jaden carefully unwrapped the gift to reveal a framed copy of the Constitution with a personal inscription from Rebecca. To Jaden, who understands that justice isn't just about laws, but about having the courage to do what's right.
With admiration and friendship, Judge Rebecca Martinez.
"This is awesome," Jaden said, reading the inscription carefully.
"I'm going to put it in my room next to the picture of us at the courthouse." The three of them walked to a nearby park bench and sat together, watching the other children play. It was a peaceful moment, filled with the contentment that comes from surviving a difficult time and emerging stronger. "I have some news to share," Rebecca said, her voice taking on a slightly formal tone that made both Marcus and Jaden look at her curiously. "I've been offered a position on a state appellate court," she continued. "It's a significant promotion, and it would mean I could work on cases that affect policy across the entire state." Marcus felt a mixture of excitement for her and sadness for himself. "That's wonderful, Rebecca. You deserve it. When would you start?" "That's the thing," Rebecca said, smiling at their concerned expressions. "The position is here in the city, so I wouldn't be moving away. But it would mean longer hours and more travel. I wanted to make sure you both were okay with that before I accepted." Jaden looked confused. "Why would you need our permission for your job?" Rebecca laughed softly. "Because you two have become very important to me. This friendship we've built, these Sunday dinners and conversations, they've become one of the best parts of my life. I wouldn't want to take a job that would interfere with that." Marcus felt moved by her consideration. Over the months, Rebecca had become more than a friend. She had become like family. Her presence in their lives had filled a void that Marcus hadn't even realized existed, bringing a sense of completeness that went beyond their shared experience of the trial. "Rebecca," Marcus said carefully, "we want you to take the job. It sounds like an amazing opportunity, and you'll be able to help even more people. We'll figure out how to maintain our friendship around your schedule." "Are you sure?" Rebecca asked. "Because there's something else I need to tell you." The reason I'm so concerned about maintaining our relationship is that somewhere along the way, it stopped being just friendship for me. At least, not just friendship. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. He had been aware of growing feelings for Rebecca over the past few months, but had hesitated to act on them because of their complicated history and the potential awkwardness it might create. I've been feeling the same way, Marcus admitted. But I wasn't sure if it was appropriate, given how we met and everything that happened. Jaden looked back and forth between them with the exaggerated confusion of a 10-year-old who was beginning to understand adult relationships. Are you guys talking about dating? Because that would be weird but also kind of cool. Both adults laughed at his directness. What would you think about that, buddy? Marcus asked his son. Jaden considered the question seriously. I think Judge Rebecca is really nice and she makes you happy, Dad, and she helps me with my homework and knows a lot about baseball. So I guess it would be okay. Rebecca reached over and ruffled Jaden's hair. Well, that's the most practical evaluation of a potential relationship I've ever heard. As the afternoon sun began to set, the three of them walked back toward the parking lot, their conversation turning to lighter topics. They made plans for Rebecca to cook dinner for them the following Sunday, and Jaden extracted a promise that she would help him with his science fair project about the judicial system. You know, Rebecca said as they reached their cars, I never properly thanked you for stopping that night on the highway. Marcus shook his head. You've thanked me 100 times over. Besides, I think I got the better end of that deal. How do you figure? Rebecca asked. I stopped to help one person on the side of the road, Marcus replied. And somehow that led to justice for my son, a new friendship, and maybe something even more special. My grandmother was right about kindness creating its own destiny. As Rebecca drove away that evening, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed since that rainy night when her car had broken down. She had been a successful but somewhat isolated judge, focused on her career and disconnected from the human impact of her work. Meeting Marcus and Jaden had reminded her what really mattered, had shown her the importance of relationships and community. For Marcus, the transformation had been equally profound. 6 months ago, he had been a struggling single father facing a legal system that seemed stacked against people like him. Now, he had not only cleared his son's name, but had helped expose corruption that had affected many families. More importantly, he had found love and partnership with someone who shared his values and commitment to justice. The following Sunday, as Rebecca prepared dinner in Marcus's kitchen while he and Jaden set the table, the three of them moved together with the easy rhythm of a family. They had been brought together by chance and crisis, but had chosen to stay together through mutual respect, shared values, and genuine affection. During dinner, Jaden announced that he had decided what he wanted to be when he grew up. I want to be a lawyer like Amanda, so I can help kids who get in trouble for doing the right thing, he said between bites of Rebecca's homemade lasagna. That's a wonderful goal, Rebecca replied. But remember, there are lots of ways to help people. You could be a teacher, or a social worker, or even a judge. Or you could be like your dad, Marcus added, and just be someone who stops to help when people need it most. Jaden grinned at both of them. Maybe I'll do all of those things. As the evening wound down and they cleaned up the kitchen together, Marcus marveled at how naturally the three of them had come together. Rebecca's appointment to the appellate court would bring new challenges and opportunities, but also the chance to make an even greater impact on the justice system they all cared about. Later, after Jaden had gone to bed, Marcus and Rebecca sat on the front porch swing, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. The night was warm and peaceful, filled with the sound of crickets and the distant laughter of neighbors enjoying their own evening rituals. Do you ever think about how different things might have been if you hadn't stopped that night? Rebecca asked. Marcus considered the question. Sometimes. But then I remember what my grandmother always said about how every act of kindness sends out ripples that we can't see. Maybe my stopping was just one ripple in a pattern that was already in motion. Or maybe, Rebecca said, taking his hand, some people are meant to find each other, and the universe just has to work a little harder sometimes to make it happen. As they sat together in comfortable silence, both Marcus and Rebecca knew that their story was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, decisions to make about their relationship, and questions about how to blend their different backgrounds and responsibilities. But they had learned that the most important things in life, the ones worth fighting for, are often the ones that require courage, faith, and the willingness to help others along the way. Their story had begun with a simple act of kindness on a dark highway, had been tested in a courtroom where truth and justice had ultimately prevailed, and now continued in the quiet moments of ordinary life where love grows and families are built. It was, as Jaden would later write in a school essay about heroes, a story that proved that sometimes the most extraordinary things happen when ordinary people choose to do what's right.